welcome to our first Team Women. This is going to be absolutely amazing. I just want to say thank you all for joining, taking the time, eating your lunch, do your thing. So, this is what we do. This is so exciting. Just a quick side note, I was so excited about this. I got married on Thursday and rushed back to come here. So just letting you know that this is all the way important. So I'm so excited for you. So can't wait. It's going to be a very exciting session. Just to give you a bit of context, for those who don't know me, don't know my background, quick thing. Before joining Team and doing marketing, I was actually in elite sport. So I was a professional athlete. I represented Great Britain in long jump, triple jump, national champion. I got a full scholarship to Iowa, which is in America. So became a European finalist, top 25 in the world. And all of those things in all of that journey, 20 years, the biggest lessons I learned was, funny enough, not about jumping further, but like the resilience, like building confidence before you actually feel ready. Because you got to be in that, you got to break records. You got to beat this person. When you see your name drop to the bottom all of a sudden and you got to make the podium, you got to dig deep. So all of those learning from setbacks and, just the power of visibility and support and mentorship can really be uplifting. So when I joined Team and I realized that so many women in the recruitment experience actually experience those same things, those building confidence, taking risks, leading through those challenges, balancing ambition with everything that life throws at you. And you just got to keep going. You got to make it work. So it's a really fantastic thing and opportunity. So it's amazing that we're able to showcase the incredible women in our network and the stories that they have of building, scaling, and leading in the recruitment landscape and the industry, because all of these lessons are valuable to everyone. Someone out there has got a niece and nephew, or if it's just not you, I said nephew, but either way, they just know it's going to be relevant. All of these insights are going to be so valuable. So, that's why we have literally kicking off the 3 incredible team women here. We have Michelle Flynn, health and performance legendary coach. We've got Elaine Irving, managing director of Extension Recruitment, and Ruth Forster, founder of Wagstaff Recruitment. They are going to be representing our build, scale, and lead section. So, ladies, if there's anything else, I'm happy to just keep on going, and let's get these wonderful women talking about why they're so elite. So to start off, we'll kick off with the build section. So representing our build, we've got Michelle Flynn. So Michelle, if you're able to tell us and tell the people, side note, we encourage anyone in the chat, any questions, please feel free, throw it in there. Any observations, anything you want to put in there, throw it in there. Like, happy to navigate and converse as we go. This is what this is all about. So please feel free. So back to Michelle. Michelle, what helped you believe in yourself before the results actually showed up?
Okay, so hello, ladies. This is so exciting. I'm going to put my recruitment owner hat on because, yes, now I am a health and performance coach working with recruiters. But actually, before that, I was a recruitment owner myself. I was a solo. So that's why hence the build part of this is coming from personal experience, not just the experience I have now working with my clients. And I think it's really interesting when you sort of first get going and like put yes in the chat if actually you found yourself starting a recruitment business. You hadn't necessarily made a plan to do that. You hadn't necessarily thought for years it would be exactly the thing that you do. Like potentially our male counterparts would be very confident to think that when they were top recruiters, they would end up doing recruitment. And often it may well be that we did it because it was necessary from a lifestyle perspective, a mental load perspective, a childcare perspective. So potentially not necessarily, certainly in my case, there was no plan. No, if I'm really honest, there was no plan. There was no business plan. There was just an inner belief that I would be able to do it. Maybe that was a bit mad. Maybe that was a bit naive, but that tends to be how I roll with things.
Actually really like that. But sometimes that state of in athletics, they called it delusion. Like you have to be feel like, because you have to really conquer these things that don't, you can't even see the results yet. You just got to believe it's out there. So hey, and sometimes no plan is the best plan, Michelle. So
Well,
not
I
mad
also think that sort of, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, kind of having had successful backgrounds working for other people in recruitment. The skills that we learned from there, the networks that we had from there, certainly in my case, my recruitment business was all built off the network that I had built in my recruitment career previously. So it was knowing that all of that hard work that had been put in over the years, both agency side and then I was the recruitment manager for a consultancy business, was that all of that was going to pay off. Those years and
mm,
years of hard work and grind, and the fact that we didn't give up, and the fact that we were being resilient, even when lots of sort of female things were coming our way. It was just that belief that that was all going to pay off somehow,
mhm.
even if the answer was somehow. Don't know how. Well,
I like that. Somehow, indeed. Boom. Yes. And Elaine, hence to the scale part. So she was doing. How did leadership change once success depending on others and not just you?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. A lot of what Michelle's just said, I think, resonates with
Mm,
probably a lot of us on today's call. I certainly fell into, leading and owning my own business as a result of having kids, wanting to do something a little bit different, wanting to get away from the high street agency, KPI-driven world that many of us find ourselves in, and
mm,
trying to balance that. And it was very much a lifestyle choice at the beginning. um, However, I think in the early days, it's very much down to you, the success of the business, the calls that you make, the relationships that you have. You're it. Suddenly,
mm,
opportunities start presenting themselves, and you're kind of faced with the dilemma. Do you scale? Do you try to stay, solo? Do you try to stay small? And in my case, opportunities presented itself where I was able to start scaling and grow the team. And the biggest shift in that is absolutely trying to learn to delegate, which is such a challenge, particularly
mm,
for a control freak like me in the early stages. Um, Using the networks, though, Michelle mentioned reaching out to people who you've met over the years. I've been blessed to work with some fantastic coaches and mentors, and they were able to support me in those delegation skills in the early days. So I think it's about creating an environment where you're no longer the person with all the answers. You have to
mm,
empower others. You have to put your trust in others as well. And you have to learn, to let go. Um, Leadership is very much a human experience, isn't it? And I
mm,
think people thrive in environments where you create platforms for success. And that's what I've very
mm.
much tried to do while staying true to the values of what I set the business up for in the first place.
Love that. That sentence you just said of creating a platform of people to have success from. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're creating, pardon the phrase, but like fertile soil in terms for plants to grow. You know,
100%.
just watering those seeds. Go ahead, Elaine. Do your thing.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a mum of three, and in the early days, the business is 15 years this year. So we've just celebrated, had a big 15-year celebration, which was
Yeah.
amazing. Loads of clients and old candidates turning up, and the team were there, and we had a really great celebration, wine tasting in a great bar in Newcastle. So that was a fun evening. But doing planning for that 15-year celebration was a time for real reflection on, what's worked over the years, what challenges have we overcome, because it's not smooth sailing. We've absolutely had to shift, diversify, pivot time and time again, and still do, still continue to do that. But yeah, having the three kids and setting a business up that allowed that lifestyle change, I've kind of realized that running a business is very similar to raising children in terms of how you lead and how you manage others. And I'm a big believer in kind of giving my kids the tools to succeed, giving them wings and letting them fly, right? Don't want to be that controlling parent who doesn't allow your kids to trip over, fall in the street, bleed, and it's very much the same with the team, give them the tools to trip up and support them in, how you do that better moving forward.
Mm. Really like that. That's so impressive as well. 15 years. It's a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
amazing.
you.
Incredible
Thank you.
feat. Well done. And leading into that 15-year mark, we've got Ruth Forster in our lead section. So, Ruth, welcome. Why
Hi.
do many high-performing women hesitate to step into that leadership role?
So I think this is a really interesting question because I've been in team probably 14 years. And if you look at team, I think there's a lot of women running recruitment businesses. So when you say why don't they do it? I'm sat there thinking, I think we do. But then you look at the stats. So maybe as team, we are and one of the great things about our organisation is it is very strong women led. So it was interesting as a perception because my perception initially was I don't think people do, but obviously they do. If you look at the bigger scale, and even if you look across women in leadership and setting up their own businesses, aside of recruitment, there is a reason of why people do step in. And I think there's a couple of things. So firstly, if we go back to the stats, so there's me in my little bubble thinking, well, I'm in team and I see loads of women owners. So is there really a problem? Well, apparently there is. Because I went and did some research and thought, oh my goodness, these numbers are horrendous. And then Jahisha kindly said that across team, 37% is membership base of women owned, which is quite interesting. And one thing is, I wonder when people go to events if they're higher on women than men. So there's probably something that we can do within team to look at that. You also found some interesting data that said that 1 in 3 female founders said confidence impacts growth. And that backs up where I would say I think there is a confidence, not in their and our own ability. I think we compare more. So I think I would like to think if we were all honest with each other, we can sit there and say we are very accountable, we are very committed, we're committed to delivering a high quality service and running a great business. So in our own way, we're doing a great job, but there's something that then there's a barrier that makes us either compare to others or think we should be doing better. And I don't even think it's just into leadership. I think it's into stepping into the next thing that women tend to wait until they are 80-90% there to do the next job. It's the classic of people applying for job adverts, isn't it? You let's say you take a manufacturing manager, right? Obviously my world's engineering manufacturing. So you take a manufacturing manager and there's a job description and there's an advert out there. And a male will typically look at that and think, I can do 40% of that, I'll apply. A female will look at it and think, I can't do 20% of that, so I won't apply. So I think it's a mindset thing of us getting comfortable to have the confidence to go to the next step. And I think that's the barrier. I think there is other elements to it that then build into it of personal situations. So when families come into play, time, financial, I think there's a whole piece around that as well. But fundamentally, I think the first thing is confidence to take the next step.
Good points, completely good points. And you mentioned about the balance in terms of like regional attendance. And I know a couple of tidbits in terms of I heard from a couple of people and for conference, they like a couple of women who wanted to come but couldn't. They've got school runs, they've got this, something like that. So as you said, in terms of from confidence, then those other factors afterwards, like there's just other things I've just got to do. So, you know, and then I can't get to that bit. And then that also can steer into other things of then I don't step into this or anything like that. So very good points, Rita. Thank you very
And I
much.
would also just like to say on this, because we did some I can't even get my words out. That's like, what do I mean? Men versus women. Come on, somebody tell me, what do I mean the training against? What do I mean?
DE&I.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Diversity. Yeah. Right. So we had some training on my team is 4 women, 1 guy. The training was very much at the language that we do. So I would just cover this off. The language of the women that are picking up the kids. They haven't got time to do this, haven't got time to do that. My male colleague picks up the kids, does the dinner, does everything. And he felt that that was an absolute, this whole conversation was, you know, we need to look at women, we need to look at it. And I think we need to remember in a balanced society, it's not just women that can't attend these events. Because also there are guys that love to be with their kids and are sharing or are the main parent. So from a confidence, but I think it's just I think we should be responsible to then say it's not just women that face those barriers.
Can I just interject there? I'm very conscious of that language when talking to clients. I will always, you know, if we're talking about part-time roles, I'll always talk about people with responsibilities outside of work, because they could be either parent or it may be people who don't have children but have you know, aging parents. So I think as recruiters, it's important that we do set the tone and not just talking about, oh, this would work well for a working mum, because that's, you know, really beginning to sound quite dated.
Natalie, it gets so segmented as soon as you start doing that. It's like, all right, you just pigeonholed me already.
There's a couple of people on this event that will know me well, and this is the only women thing that I've done, because I've got a real problem with us having, if we keep pushing this thing of women, it's all on women, we're going to go the opposite way and cause another problem. So we have to have a really balanced view of it is the individual, Natalie, and thank you for raising that as well. I think as recruiters, we have that responsibility to have that balanced view. We need to carry on talking about this because we want to encourage young women and we want to give people the skills and the confidence to be able to do great things that we've done. We just need to make sure the language is right.
I think if I can just, I was coaching a woman recently in her 20s, attractive looking woman, really super smart, had worked the way up the ladder really quickly. She was more operations than the sales side of recruitment. And she was coming to me because she was just like, how do I walk into a room and get taken seriously? How do I walk in and they don't think that I'm the note taker? And it was just a really interesting conversation that sort of a man would never have to sort of have. But it's still sort of, it's so difficult, isn't it? And you're right, Ruth, we need to sort of be raising the bar for everyone. I think some of the challenge for women is that they've never even got to the point of being senior in their careers because they've stopped and maybe had maternity breaks, which have meant they've never actually got to that point to even go, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to start a business now because I'm brilliant. It's that almost sort of invisible ceiling, isn't it? Where businesses want to hire senior females, but it's like, well, unless you create an environment that isn't all male. I've got some of my clients and there are no women that work for them apart from kind of anyone who works in a back office function. And you're like, how are you even going to attract more women to work in those environments? So it's such a wider, interesting conversation, which thankfully is definitely getting more balance over the time, I think.
Oh, yeah. Love that. That was really good. Good knowledge there. Good knowledge there. Thanks. Well, speaking of Michelle, back to you. So leaning on to what you were saying, what do women often then underestimate when they start a business? What do they miss or missing in that?
I think it's probably anyone who starts a business probably underestimates. And I think definitely it depends on people's different situations. I don't have any children, so I wasn't having to be thinking about sort of any of the challenges that can come with balancing all of those different things. But that's why I think things like this are really important for us to be able to talk and to share and to go, how do you deal with this situation? Or sort of in my case, sort of I didn't grow and scale a business, but had I of what would I have wanted to do for women in the business who needed to have maternity pay that I will cover or time off that I've never had to think about because I didn't do that. So I think it's sort of, although sometimes, I don't know, let me know if you agree. If you all had have known what you know now, would you have done it? I think it's probably that if you'd have known that it wasn't going to be this nice, easy, drop the kids off, pick them up, coffee in between, not work really hard. And now you're like, oh my goodness, particularly anyone on here who's a solo as well, when you're trying to be the person on the phone to the internet that's gone down and chase the accountant. Like on the Eisenhower box, there's the big delegate section. And I had to write in the team group, sorry, solos, maybe delegate means to AI. It's that difficulty, isn't it? Of sort of going, right, how much should we know in advance and how much should we actually just learn and experience from our own situations of doing it, but whilst surrounding ourselves with amazing people like we have in Team. And it's definitely sort of, I go to a lot of different recruitment events and often there are very few women in the room. So Team, I think, creates that really all-inclusive for anyone who wants to come and be part of the network. So I think that's a real compliment. But I don't know, I'd like to know people's views as to how much you actually knew when you started the business and what do you wish you knew now? And yeah, whether you would have done it if you'd have known that.
That's very valid. What would I wanted to know? It's very true. Marinate on those, guys. Throw it into the chat if you need to. But I agree with that. Yeah, what would I have wanted to have known to start this? Because that's not an easy feat to do, regardless of who you are. Just starting a business, that's a lot to do.
Yeah.
So, Elaine, then, leading on to that, how do you think you then scale without losing who you are as a person? Because sometimes you have to become who a nightmare or anything like that, or an alter ego. How do you scale without losing yourself, your core person?
Yeah, and I think it's about understanding who that core person is, really. Why did you start up on your own? Being true to your values, understanding, having a purpose. For me, recruitment was always about the people piece. I loved the point that we were facilitating, changing people's lives. We've all got so many stories, haven't we, where we've been the facilitator to help that person either get on the career ladder or, help that young mum return to work after a period being out raising children or, empowering that young graduate to the first opportunity and then looking back years later and seeing where their careers have flourished. And it's very much, I think, the same once you start scaling. It's about staying authentic to the values, and as I say, for me, it was very much being that leader who could inspire, being that leader who wanted to do things a little bit differently, and I seen a lot of certainly high street agencies. A lot of us started our careers in a lot of the big brand names. Myself, it was Manpower, back in the 90s. And it was all KPI stats, stat-driven numbers. You don't create a culture where people thrive by numbers. You create a culture where people thrive dealing with humans and having that human element. I think there's been a massive shift lately with the introduction of AI. We're all using it in different guises, different shapes and forms, and certainly post-COVID, when everybody were working from home, and there's a shift now more to go back into the office, very much in our sector, in engineering and manufacturing again. People are definitely moving back to that. People want to be around others. They want those human interactions again. I was on the call yesterday, the team call yesterday that Vanessa Rath did. I don't know how many of you were on there, but she talked about being humane. And I think that's that's in it is core. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. That's what I got into recruitment for. That's what I believe in, creating life-changing events for people, and not losing myself. There's been times, I ain't gonna lie, there's times where, gosh, you feel like you're gonna sink. We all go through challenges in life, don't we? Nothing is smooth sailing for very long. And if it is, you better be ready because that wave is coming. You talked about resilience right at the beginning, Jahisha, and recruitment's all about resilience. So the way I stay true to myself and not losing myself is very much remembering my beliefs, why I got into it in the first place. What's my purpose? If you've got a purpose, and you keep checking in on that purpose and surrounding yourself with other people who are keeping you aligned to that purpose.
Yeah.
Get people to challenge you, your friends, your family members, your team members, if you've got people you can trust and rely on. But yeah, it's I think for women, there's definitely a greater sense of imposter syndrome with a lot of us. Going into that room full of strangers and being able to create conversations or being that speaker at that event and feeling, why is my voice matter? Do people really want to hear from me? Have I got stories that I can share? I think we all have a sense of that, but I think Ruth's hit the nail on the head as well, thinking it's not just a female trait. Men absolutely have imposter syndrome. We talk to candidates who have fear of interviews, and yeah, and males are juggling the same things that we are outside of work these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but the great thing I think about women though is women have a inherent sense of being able to hold each other up, absolutely. Having your tribe, got a tribe of women certainly behind me, I've got a tribe. And every one of them, have got your back at different times. You know who to turn to for certain challenges.
Hell yeah. Love that. I actually got two things. One, you mentioned about the wave coming, and I was told a really great quote by Sam Rasdell, shout out. He said, yes, when that wave comes and it's up, what is a surfer's favorite part of surfing? That biggest wave. So just ride it. Find that thing and ride it, kind of a thing. Because I was like, oh my gosh. But so he thought of it as like, if you can, try and spin it. Think of, okay, yeah, that's a lot going on. But when I conquer this wave, wow, this is going to be mental. So I just wanted to throw in that quote that I thought of, because I like that one. And back to Michelle's point about starting a business of like, wow, what could I have learned before? Something that I thought of when I was doing athletics, because if that's a very individual sport, I found myself not alone, but kind of alone. Like I'm the only one on the runway. I'm the only one who's doing this kind of a thing. As Elaine said, I've got my tribe of people. My family were backing me, but I was in America. They were in England. So there's so much backing you could do. But to be fair, credit to them. They were doing their thing. So in terms of for me, it was like doing the little things consistently, and that. So I got onto a routine of just that porridge in the morning, boom, just and their thing, my electrolytes, and just keeping those few bits consistent kept that train moving, kind of a thing. And just those were the things that I kept on to myself, reminding me. And all of a sudden, then you saw those small wins become those big ones. Because there were times I'm just sitting there, it's like, why am I still doing this? This is long. So I hear it. And credit to all you guys, you're still in the industry. So that's why I just wanted a bit shout out to that. So well done to you guys because you're still doing those things. So back onto Ruth. So how do you think that you can lead with authority without changing who you are?
Yeah. So it sort of leads into, well, it follows Elaine, because once you understand who you are, then we all flex, we all modify, we all adapt as we grow. We've talked about imposter syndrome, and I totally agree. We all have that. I just don't like the phrase. And I think it's that period of time where we don't have a lot of skill or knowledge going into something that's new, and we're in a period of growth. So I like to reframe again how you reframe things, reframe the wave. I think that's brilliant, Jahisha. Is instead of thinking I've got this imposter syndrome, which feels quite negative, for me it's hold on to who I am, but know that I'm going through a period of growth. So we all have set up our own businesses for a reason, and that it comes back to you've said your purpose, Elaine. Simon Sinek's all about find your why. When you've found your why of why you're doing things, everything else then builds around there, and you have people that are on that same, delivering that same message as you are. So I think understand you first, understand that you're going to flex and modify, but really keep who you are and listen to your gut. Early on in my career, because of a confidence thing and listening to other people of how they do things, I didn't trust my gut. And
in there.
Yeah. And I lost one specific member of staff that I really wish I'd never, and the relationship totally broke down. And it was because I didn't trust my instinct, because I was new to managing a business. I was listening to people that were older than me, and they were women. It wasn't men influencing my decision. And I didn't listen to my own gut, and I should have done. And again, it goes back to, you find those people eventually that you really do trust. And you can have that confidential conversation to check something out if you are questioning yourself. So I think understand you first, and then as things change, the core of you is already there. Did that answer your question? Got a feeling it didn't.
It did.
Okay, that's fine.
There
you go, second guessing myself. You see?
It's kind of like, when they do the planes and they say put your mask on before you do the other person's
Absolutely.
mask.
Yeah.
Not good. How can I save you? So I was right there, Ruth, 100%. Yeah. So boom, nice. And to Michelle for building. Okay, how did you win your first clients? How did you build that momentum to secure that win? Like, wow, how'd that happen?
So mine was a bit of a different situation because I was the recruitment manager for a business that had been bought by a large American company. And that large American company, EMC, which has since been bought by Dell, wanted to keep me as their recruiter. And it was getting to the point that I didn't really want to do that anymore. But I didn't know what else I was going to do because I had negotiated commission as an internal recruiter, which was unusual. So actually, we agreed that I would set up my business and they would be my first client. So I had like the ideal situation. I'm still sat at my same desk doing my same job, but now I'm charging a percentage instead of getting a flat fee per deal, which I was getting. So I very much appreciate I had it easy in terms of that because I already could see how I was just going to make the money straight away. But from that point, how I then got, if we look at my next client as my first one, it was through the community. It was through, I worked in the software development space in London. I had been part of the communities. I'd been hosting the user groups. I knew every developer in London. So when it came to me being sort of saying, hey, I can now actually take on other clients, they were my business development function. And I've talked a lot about how I built a business and I never made a single cold call. I was doing up to 20 deals a month as a solo. And it was all because of in-person building communities, which I know doesn't work if people aren't recruiting in their geography. I appreciate that. But it just meant that they were all out there. And then when their bosses said, hey, we're looking to hire, it was like, oh, we should speak to Michelle. So I was just getting inbounds. And I'm not talking like Moonpig was one of mine, the Financial Times was one of mine, kind of well-known brands. So I think it was all that work around being a good, decent person. Do what you say
Yeah.
to do, respond to people, don't ghost people, all of that reputation that had built up. When I then launched my business, it meant that I basically had a waiting list of clients. And I think particularly with AI coming in, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Like it's there. I'm listening to, I shared it again this morning in the team group, was Alex Hormozy. If you don't like Stephen Bartlett, still listen to this podcast, because the first thing he talks about is AI and says, is it actually making you any more money? And about the amount of time that we're spending trying to save time by using AI and all the things that we're spending on it. Are you actually using the right thing? But it was about, I don't even know where I was going with that. That went off on a pivot. Oh, yeah, about with AI, the importance of human and the differences that is going to stand out from all these businesses that just send automated everything and AI everything and use it what it's good at, but it comes down to real people. And being good, decent, responsive means that everyone talks about you, because as we know, there are lots of recruiters that don't necessarily do that. They're very much just get one deal and leave the client, go in and the client and the candidate, done. Whereas if you go in and you do a brilliant job with your clients, you build those great relationships, then that is just going to be, and again, in this podcast this morning, he talks about how much cheaper it is to keep working the same clients than he's not talking about recruitment, but it's works in the same thing about constantly having to go out and win new business. So every time, it's how I built my coaching business now and my speaking business. For anyone who is working in their geography, or at least relatively, like a bit different if you're working the US market, but get out there, get out with your people, get face to face with them, because let's all be honest, is that until you meet someone face to face, you don't really know you've met them. Like we all have it when we all meet each other at conference and that, we're like, have we met in person? Is it LinkedIn? And then when you've met that person in person, like I remember when when I came and did a session at event Lynn was running, that was it. Now I'll always remember Lynn because we met in person. Same with Ruth. I remember that moment in at conference where there you were at the front and we had a little cuddle. You're never going to forget those things. So for me, if I was going again tomorrow and building recruitment business tomorrow, I would do exactly the same thing. I would just build great relationships in person.
Perfect. Love that. Go, Michelle. So basic credibility to who you are as a person got you lifting up. Love that. 100%. Love that. Elaine, so what strengths do you women bring to building a team? What strengths do you think really harness that?
Yeah, I think one thing that women have is high emotional intelligence. And I think with emotional intelligence, comes all of those other great things that are sort of under the surface, the ability to kind of read what's under the surface, what's going on with somebody. When we first started to, grow our team and have more people join us, I work with a fantastic leadership and development coach. And one of the things she introduced was a session at the beginning of every team meeting that we have, and we'll have these weekly. She introduced head, heart, hands. And obviously explained what that sort of concept was, and it give the foundation, or the formula, if you like, for every team member to come and talk about, what was in the head that week, what they had to do on their to-do list, but also what's happening outside of work. When I first started building a team, I was very much presenting myself as, the work Elaine, and the home Elaine didn't come into work. I didn't really tell the team what was going on in my personal life. If things were falling apart, you almost put on a persona of everything's great. You didn't want to show, or I certainly didn't want to show my vulnerabilities. And there was a period in my life, you know, we talked earlier about not everybody's got children to juggle, and some people have got aging parents, and that very much happened to me. Both my parents got diagnosed with Alzheimer's about 4 months apart, and they were starting to fall off the cliff with that. And I was having caring responsibilities before going into the office on a morning and after leaving the office on an evening, and hiding that from the team. And there was a couple of days where I'd turn up at my parents' house and things had gone haywire. And subsequently I was going to be late into the office and I would ring up. But I started to trust in the team and share what was going on behind the scenes. And that was very much that coach who kind of helped me be authentic and lean into that, and then creating an environment where people felt safe and heard. So yeah, the strengths I think that women bring are absolutely that emotional intelligence, the ability to show vulnerability, the ability to just build psychological safety, I think is a key one. Letting people understand and know that you've got the back. We're all human, we're all juggling things regardless of what sex we are. We all have lives outside of work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Nice touch, Elaine. Nice touch. I like that.
Mm.
And Ruth, so in terms of those difficult conversations, those are just tough anyway. I'm going to speak from personal experience. I'm not good at them. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. So, but as a leader, how do you navigate them? What defines how you can really conquer that difficult conversation, get the message across, but still show that authoritativeness of the message you're trying to show?
Jahisha, I'm terrible at this as well. So, if anybody else wants to put an I am in the chat to make Jahisha and I feel better, then that would be great. If you do find it. So I think this is a really interesting angle, because when I ran a branch for another business, I didn't have a problem with this. When I was running a team for somebody else, I didn't have an issue. I must have had some issue, but I didn't have half as much as an issue as I did when I started having my own business. The minute I started employing people, I'm great at the first bit. I can set the boundaries, we start off brilliantly. And then what comes in? Emotional connection. I then start to like them. It's great if I don't like them, because I can manage them really, really easy. And then I can have difficult conversations, and that is one side to me. But as soon as I start to like somebody, it's a bit like me trying to have a conversation with my husband and not wanting to piss him off.
Yeah.
It's that early dating or early dating. Yeah. When you're really going to say what you really feel.
Yeah.
Else feels that way. That's where I feel I went to of, I really like this person. So then I try and make it work for them. So to answer your question about having the art of having difficult conversations, is to learn to be very structured and see what you're trying to achieve. Don't lose who you are as a human being, and that you need to be human, but have a commerciality around it. What are we trying to achieve with and it can be anybody. It can be what you're trying to achieve with your suppliers, what you're trying to achieve within your team, what you're trying to achieve within your clients as well. Because I don't know if anybody else has had it going, you get to a point as well with clients and you're like, oh, but I really like them. I'm not going to say that. So, and if that's just me, then obviously it's just me.
Me too.
So I think see it in very much of try and put, and that's what I do now, is I have to think, right, there's a brilliant so has anybody watched the TEDx talk by Kim Scott talking about radical candor?
No, but it sounds like we might need to find that.
Okay, so you've got 4. So basically, in a nutshell, she's Michelle's nodding. So I think she was ex-Google, Michelle. I think she was ex-Google. Anyway, she has a team of people. She's managing, and she's got this really great guy called Bob. And he's lovely, and everybody loves Bob. Problem with Bob is Bob is shit at his job, but he's lovely. So they carry on and they task avoid, and they have these whole conversations. And eventually, it's the US, so obviously he's going to get fired. So she sits down with him and she said, "And we're going to have to let you go because blah 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 blah." And he turns around to her and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And then he said, "Why didn't anybody tell me?" So at that point, we have been we failed because we haven't given somebody constructive feedback to enable them to get better and to solve a problem. We've gone, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. That behavior is okay because we like you, or you're billing really, really well. And then it comes to a crescendo, and then we cut off. So I try and go by radical, and if I'm having a difficult conversation, I will put it into, look, this is a bit of radical candor coming out. I need to give you some feedback because I want you to be better.
Yeah.
So that's where I sort of, art of difficult conversations, make sure you're feeling that you're dealing with it in a commercial business orientation, keep the human element, a bit like AI, but make sure that you are giving constructive feedback with that message is you want that person to be better. You want them to be happy in their job.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm not giving you this feedback just to be a total bitch.
I think it's also about where you get the feedback. And I talk a lot about this in my ADHD talk about sort of don't criticize publicly, but I think that goes for everybody. No one wants to wait until someone shouts across the office, "Oh, for God's sake, Michelle, your breath stinks." And I'm like, why did no one just hand me a mint or say that your breath, like, we all want to know if we've got something in our teeth, but yet we're all too embarrassed to spot it to not say it. So don't do it publicly. Don't wait until you're so annoyed that you're just going with the emotion. The technique I teach, it's called non-violent communication, and it's not about not punching people because we definitely shouldn't do that. But it's about you lead with a fact. So, hey, Bob, you haven't hit your target in the last 3 months. No one can argue with that. That's a fact. This is often where we go wrong. The next bit is we make a judgment. I feel like you don't care. I feel like you're not putting all your effort in. Straight away, Bob's annoyed because I'm just now putting a judgment on what he thinks or feels. Whereas you say, I feel frustrated. I feel disappointed. No one can argue because that's how I feel. And I use this at home for everything that I need to get done. You explain why. Bob, I feel just disappointed because I think you're great. The team love you here. I really want you in the business, but I feel disappointed because you haven't hit your targets. So, and this is the final bit, the suggestion. So what I suggest is that you either work harder, go on a training course, pay more attention, whatever it might be. And then almost you're practicing before you deliver everything. So it becomes more comfortable. I hate difficult conversations. It's why I never grew a recruitment business. I was a terrible manager. But now, a bit like Ruth was saying, that she sort of says, I'm going to do some radical candor at home. I say to my husband, I'm just going to practice some NVC here with you. And he's like, what have I done? And I'm like, can you not load the dishwasher that way? Or can you actually not put the washing on a washing line that's all squished? It's never going to dry. So now we can get beyond having to kind of work through the process. But any conversation you need to have, or when I'm working with people who want promotions or pay rises, it's like, what's the fact? How do you feel? Why? Go with a positive. I really like it here, because everyone wants to hear that. And then what are we going to do about it? And they might say no. They might go, I don't care what you have to say. But then at that point, you've had the conversation. They can't say, you tell me. And if they're not prepared to listen, then there's a question as to whether they're right for your business or not.
Facts on that. Good. I like that. I'm going to take that for my husband too. Thanks, by the way.
It works very well with husbands.
Throw it in there. Perfect. Right. We are coming to the final few questions. So this is our last round of them. So Michelle, could you please share any advice of what you would give women who are deciding to launch now? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to put the boundaries in from the beginning, to decide why they're actually doing it. We talked about why and purpose. What is the reason? What do you want your life to look like? Because if you go into something and there isn't, I'm not saying any plan is going to be 100%, but if you're going into it without any idea, before you know it, you're going to be working 18-hour days. Whereas if you're setting up a business because you want flexibility for childcare, or because you want flexibility to go to the gym, whatever your thing is, put those boundaries in, block out your time. I'm a massive one for time planning and understand how you're using your time, because we get sucked up with wasting too much time on these things. So what do you actually want your life to look like when you create that business? And then make a business that does that. Like, recruitment never stops. We know that there is always more clients, there's always more opportunities. And if big money and big exit isn't your final purpose for doing it, and actually it's just to make enough money to have a nice life, make sure you're creating a business that works for that. And Christian Mather, like, if you're not following him on LinkedIn, his LinkedIn posts are brilliant, because he talks about people who are like, I want the 100 million exit and I want this and I want that. And it's like, why are you actually doing it? And don't lose sight of it, is what I would say to that.
That. Thank you. Noted for that one. And also, by the way, I've put in the radical candor talk that Ruth mentioned, and here is also Christian Mather's LinkedIn. Check him out. It's clearly a good recommendation from there. Boom. And Elaine, how do you stay ambitious while managing everything else? Of course, you were talking about caring for your parents as well as them heading to the office. Like, bloody hell, that's a thing. Just a day at work is, wow, and you have to do a lot. So how do you stay ambitious whilst juggling all of those things?
Yeah, well, we evolved, don't we? It's very interesting, everything Michelle said there, and even what Ruth was saying with radical candor. It's feeding so nicely. The questions are structured in such a way that it's a natural conversation, isn't it? That I think we're all struggling with. But for me, I don't think ambition and balancing life have to be opposites. Ambition should really be connected to your why, everything we've just talked about, understanding what did you start the business for, what's important, what do you want, and that changes in the 15 years that I've had the business. It was very different in year one than it is now. I've absolutely got different objectives, different SMART goals now versus in year one. And that's evolved. The situation I spoke earlier about my parents, that's moved on, and I'm very much working back in the business now. That's not something that's part of my day-to-day life anymore. So you can give more back to the business. So your ambition has got to be linked with where you are at that time and what the business needs and what your long-term objective is and your short-term goals. But it's staying true to yourself, being aligned, continually challenging yourself, going on that journey of constant learning, allowing yourself to evolve, taking time out for yourself sometimes as well. I think this is something that I've particularly struggled with. And earlier this year, I went on a business retreat for 2 days. Felt so much guilt, because I think that naturally that's a big trait that a lot of women constantly feel guilty that we're not giving enough of ourselves to all these other facets in life. But that 2 days out of the business and just blocking the time out again, the team have spoke about that, blocking that time out to think about strategizing what needs to happen, what needs to change, where do you need to go next. You've got to continuously evolve. We cannot just stay. So ambition isn't always about chasing the monetary achievements. It can be just about evolving and having something that's sustainable. And something that creates joy. We're doing this for, if you're in business and unhappy doing what you're doing, you need to get out of business and go and work for somebody else. You've got to have joy and fulfillment in your careers, for sure.
Elaine, I love that. Boom, underline that part. Have joy there, because otherwise this is all just nothing. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yes, because that's where you get your best work as well. and the people can feel it too. Love it, Elaine.
Contagious.
And Ruth, to tie us all off. So, what creates long, successful career women? What advice would you give, or what can you share in terms of that longevity in careers for women?
I would say know what you're aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
However, this can be viewed very differently. So I remember when I started my business, and everybody was saying, "So what's your end game?" I haven't got a flipping clue. I've just decided to set up on my own because I couldn't agree with my old boss, and I'm sat in my spare bedroom being a recruiter. I have no end game at this point. But everybody was like, what are you going to do? Are you going to have a team? Are you going to grow it functionally? Are you going to grow it geographically? What's your year? What's this? I'm like, whoa. Now, some people can deal with that. For me, it was just, so know what you're there. So at the point, I was like, all I know is I love doing recruitment. My boss didn't. She'd fallen out of love with it. I just want to carry on doing what I was doing. I'm just going to do it for myself. Over the years, and a few people know that what I do, which I find this really, really helps me, is know what you're aiming for. For me means every year I write myself a letter.
Oh, love that.
And it's evolved over the time, but I break it down into 4 areas. The first one is business. The second one is financial. The third one is friends and family, and the fourth one is personal. So I just review where I am at that point, and it's December. I used to not read the letter for a whole year. I've changed that, and I will check in twice a year just to make sure what I said what I was doing. And I just say, right, where are you? Where do you want to be? And what I then do is when I read the letter back, if there's things that I haven't done, I put a number next to them. So say I've put something on my letter this year and I haven't done it, but it's still important to me. I then put it on next year's letter, but I put a 2 next to it. I've got stuff on my list. Kerry and I are very, very close friends. We were friends before we joined Team. So Kerry knows me very, very well. So Kerry knows that there's things on my list that have got a 6 next to them because it's 6 years, because it involves my husband and he's not pulling his finger out. But it makes me realise what's on there and what's important. Now, I've done yearly ones, and I'm starting to sort of shift that now to think, okay, well, I'm 51. Where do I want to be now in 5 years' time? And do I need to be looking a bit longer? So just know where you're aiming for, whether it's in 12 months or if you want it to be longer, and flex that. There is an article on our website, and while you're talking, Jahisha, I will find it because it talks about the letter. And there's I just recommend anybody to do that. Know what you're aiming for is my
I love that.
I love it.
My thing.
What I can do as well is, if you have it, I can share it with all the participants as well post this. So
I will do.
Perfect. Wow, we wrapped it up. Oh my gosh, well done, everybody. That was, I can see the chat as well. I can maybe see it. There's a lot of conversation in there too. Like, up your human. I agree with that one. I like that too. Building the foundations. I remember that as well. This has been super insightful. I really hope that everybody else has gained value, gained insights, started something new here. I'm totally here. I learned something. I like that, so I hope everybody else did as well. And I will follow in with any resources, there we go, that are shared from this, any of the chat things that have come up here, throwing Christian Mather, the Candor TED Talk. Make sure you get on that one. Ruth, that's what I learned. I'm getting on that one, 100%. So thanks for that. Anybody else has anything to say, please feel free. Otherwise, I'm totally here. We can wrap this baby up. I just want to take a moment. I just want to thank the absolute industry legends that are Michelle Flynn, Elaine Irving, and Ruth Forster. Like, wow, what a conversation that was. I'm genuinely so grateful that you kicked this off. And I hope that everybody else makes sure you're following them and you're in touch with them. Keep chatting to them. I'll make sure I share all their contact details and stuff like that. So you've got the insights, you've got the inside grabs. So yeah, that's all then. Well done, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank what a pleasure.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks so. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a great one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Oh, that's really nice. I like that.
Okay, hang on. Where am I going? Leave. Thanks, Jahisha.
Thanks,
of course,
Elaine.
No problem,
Lovely
everyone.
to see you, ladies.
See
you
you later.
soon. Bye.
Take care. Thanks, Jahisha. Bye.
Of course. Bye.